Hello, everybody. I am so excited to bring another wholesaler on board. You guys have been super interested about the wholesale aspect of reselling, very new to the reseller community. And since you guys had so many questions, I've been wanting to interview some more people, and Shelly was gracious enough to offer up her perspective on wholesaling. Thank you, Shelly.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit, just briefly introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do.
Okay. I started selling online back in like 2000. I was a stay-at-home mom and just wanted to kind of help out with the income, and I discovered eBay. And so it was back when you had to send or wait for money orders and stand in line at the post office. There were no printing labels, or I remember loading pictures and going and doing the dishes because it would take that long for a picture to load. So yeah, and just I've come from a reselling family. My parents had an antique junk store when I was a kid, and lots of garage sales and all of that good stuff. So I just started watching Kaylee in the spring of 23, and then realized that she was working with a wholesaler, and I was like, wait a minute, what is this about? And so I kind of was like, maybe I could do that, because I have a Goodwill outlet, bins. And somebody reached out to me on one of your videos, and I started selling to them, and then I kind of reached out to you, I think, and was like, hey. And then I was like shocked that you got back to me, and I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that about, I guess, your background of like your parents owning did you say a drugstore, a vintage antique store?
No, it was called the Family Attic. It was in Anacortes, Washington, when I was a kid. And then unfortunately, my dad passed away when I was 8. And so we moved to Southern Oregon, where my mom was from. But my grandma was always into antiquing, and my mom and dad were. But my mom and dad had that antique junk store, and my mom was really into like vintage clothes and stuff.
Yeah.
And so then later on, after I had my kids, my mom managed an antique store for my grandfather. So I always had like a booth, and then she was always doing clothes out of there. And so it just kind of snowballed into online.
That's awesome. So entrepreneurship runs in the family then. Like
Definitely.
You've been exposed to it for a long time. That's awesome. Very cool. Well, I think it's funny that you were shocked that we were immediately like, yes, because I think a lot of people are trying to get into wholesaling right now, and they're having the same reaction where they're like, I just don't think anyone would, take me on as their wholesaler. I'm like, oh, trust me, there's tons of people. There is a great need for it in the reseller community. So wholesaling means a lot of different things to a lot of people. Could you explain in your own words, I guess, what wholesaling means to you?
Wholesaling means to me just buying as inexpensively as possible per piece, and then reselling it for a pretty good profit margin immediately to someone else who is going to use it to resell.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it too. A lot of people think that it's got to be like, I guess, pallets worth of stuff and things like that. So it's always interesting to hear different people's perspective and definitions of it. You said first you started wholesaling to someone that was from the comments, which I think is really cool. Mm-hmm. When did that start? How long have you been doing wholesaling?
I started that in mid-June. And when I started it, I wasn't doing buy calls because I didn't even really think about that. I just kind of asked her what she wanted. We talked on the phone briefly, and it was just kind of a trust thing. Like, we were just like, okay, I think we were both just like, okay, she's going to send me the money and I'm going to ship her this stuff, and we're both going to hope that the money goes through and the stuff comes, But I just sent her a box of stuff, just kind of, and there was some good stuff in there. There was like some Johnny Was and some, I think there was even some Sundance in there, but it was all stuff that I had just bought to sell myself. So I had like a bit of a death pile, not huge, but enough to fill probably like a 20-pound box.
Awesome.
And I just sent her kind of like a little manifest inside of it, just handwritten, like what I was charging for each thing, and this is the total. And if you're okay with it, then pay me. And that's kind of how I think we did that like 3 times. And then I started dealing with you guys, and then Nikki was like, well, let's do a buy call. And I was like, oh, okay, that sounds easy. And so then I talked to her and was like, could we do buy calls instead? And then you'll get what you want and you can reject what you don't want. And she was like, oh, that would be great. Because I think she was getting some, because I was sending her some Shein stuff, but just like, Shein has some cute stuff. Unfortunately, it doesn't have very good sell-through rate or good sale prices. But I was just, just sending her stuff. I didn't really know what to do, So.
Yeah. That's awesome that it kind of transitioned from that. And I've seen, even with our own wholesalers, do things a little bit differently. But for us, I feel like the most efficient method is the video calling, just because it's like just so super quick and you get to see everything and you get to ask questions. And also just like on a more personal level, I mean, we've gotten to know you really well. And,
Right.
I call us friends now. So, to me, I love the video calls for sure.
Yeah, because I've been doing this for so long, and my social life is like Facebook and a few people that I see at the bins that I know. So it is like that social interaction is awesome too, which kind of sounds sad, but it's true.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm the same way. I think as resellers, we can all relate to kind of becoming a recluse a little bit, just because you're at home, you're on the computer. Most people do it from their home, so
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that. And I don't think if it weren't for finding the reseller community, I probably wouldn't have very many friends, just because I kept a small circle. And most people don't know this, but I'm very shy, like actually in person. So I love having the online reseller community. So you've been doing this then, if you've been doing it since June, it's been about 6-7 months, about half of a year.
Yep.
So it's definitely evolved, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. What did you do before wholesaling? You mentioned that you were reselling since you were sending money orders, which I had to laugh at when I heard that on the call the other day. But so you've been reselling for a long time. Tell us a little bit about like your reselling journey and what you did leading up to wholesale.
I was just cross-listing. I would start with Poshmark and cross-list to eBay and Mercari, mostly clothing and accessories. I do have some hard goods because I do have a little bit of, compared to most people, I have a pretty good knowledge of antiques, just because I was kind of raised in that. My husband, when we go to antique malls, I'm like, ooh, I think that's a Francoma. And he'll be like, what? And I like turn it over. Yep, that's what that is. He's just like, how do you know that? I'm like, because I just do, because that's just what I was raised with. But I just really kind of fell in love with the whole fashion and the clothes. I love selling clothes just because they're so easy to ship, like compared to like trying to sell like a ceramic vase that has such a potential to get broken in the mail, and then just throwing something in a poly mailer and knowing it's going to get there just fine and it won't break. So that's why I kind of really started focusing on clothes. Is I probably started focusing on that back in like the mid 2000s, where I really kind of switched to just clothes.
Yeah, I was going to ask, did you start selling clothes, or was it mostly hard goods in the beginning?
I was selling, I think one of the first things I sold was Madison, who is now 26, I sold like her little Nikes that she had for her like little first shoes, which I regret now because I would love to have them.
Yeah.
but it got to the point, and I was selling anything that I could sell. And, you know, it got to the point where my husband and my kids would be like, honey, I'm going to set this down right here. I'm leaving it here because I'm going to use it in a couple weeks. Don't sell it. You know, kind of thing. And then I discovered thrift stores, which just kind of cracks me up because I, you know, went to thrift stores and garage sales my whole life. But it was just like, wait a minute. Like, I can't, it's not just stuff around the house. Like, I can go buy stuff and then flip it for money. Okay, let's start doing this. And that's when I started. And then our little town, Klamath Falls, Oregon, that's where I was raised. They called it the Goodwill As Is. And it was this little room at the back of our regular Goodwill. And they had like Gaylords, the big boxes on the pallets. Mm-hmm. And that was basically their outlet store, but it was called As Is.
Wow, I've never heard of that. That's pretty
cool. So I started shopping there. And when I first started shopping there, it was really cool because you would just go up there with a box and he would just go, oh, it looks like $4. And I'd be like, okay. And you'd walk out with a box of stuff. But then they started getting strict with the weights and stuff. But it was very cool.
So it was like the bins before the bins.
Yeah. And I'm sure that there were bins. That was probably in maybe like 2007 or something. So I think there was probably bins around the country. I was just little town, you know, so it was cool for us to have that.
And they don't still have that, do they?
No, they still have it.
Really?
Yep. Oh, in fact, one of the ladies that lives in Klamath that I know, she sold to my very first buyer, and she goes there and buys.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty cool. If I'm ever in the area, I will definitely have to check that out. That's awesome. So you have done a mix of clothing and hard goods. It sounds like you have really good knowledge of like vintage antiques, which I always think, even if you don't, even if it's not like your specific niche, it's good to have some idea because you just don't want to pass up on things, you know. Mm-hmm. I know a couple little hard good things that if I see them, I'm going to get them. But you're right. It is really hard to ship. So I totally get why you switched to clothing. So what made you decide to move on to wholesale? And you're currently still reselling, correct?
I currently am still reselling, but you know, after talking to Sean and Bethany on Wednesday on that call, I am really leaning hard towards going to I will probably still do a little bit of my own reselling, but going hard towards the wholesaling. Yeah. What made me decide it was I have literally, I go through these cycles, and I'm sure you know, and anybody that's listening that's been reselling for any sort of time knows, you go through these cycles where you're on and you're getting all your listings done and you're doing really good. And for me, it's usually when I have a goal. So like last May, we went to Disney. So we had planned that trip like this time last year. You know, we'd made our down payment, and I told my husband, I'm going to pay for it. Like, I'm going to do it with my reselling business. And I hit it hard. I was just so excited. And I did, within, I think it was by March, I had it paid for. And I was just it was a couple $1,000s. And I was just yay, I did it. And, but then you get burnt out because you're just okay, I don't want to list that many things a day. And I don't want to go to the post office. You just get in those ruts or whatever. And literally for years, I've just kept asking, I just want to be able to go thrift, and I don't want to have to do all the listing. And so I just feel like this was, for lack of a better word, like a godsend. It was just okay, you've been doing this, you did good. And I felt like I just kind of had surrendered to it, which I feel like sometimes you just have to do in life. When you surrender to things, then things start to fall into place because you're not pushing against them. And it just happened. And then within a couple, it wasn't even a couple months. It was literally 3 or 4 weeks. I was just I had probably quadrupled my income just because after that trip, I had just fallen off. I was burnt out. I wasn't listing the way I had, and I have that choice because my husband's brings home the bacon, he like pays all the bills and everything. So what I make is usually just like fun money. We go out to eat and I like make my car payment out of my money, but I always make that, and then I would just kind of fall off. And so this was just like, wow, like I'm really contributing to the household. Like this is awesome. And I think that's, you're probably going to ask that question here, but I think people don't realize how much money is in wholesaling. It's pretty amazing if you have access to good, I want to say cheap, but it's inexpensive clothes, because you're not buying cheap clothes. You're buying really expensive clothes.
Right. Yeah, we will definitely talk more about that later, but that is probably, it seems like the biggest misconception that people have. And that's why I love, starting to interview wholesalers and pulling people on, because a lot of people don't think it's possible, and it totally is. And there's probably a lot of people that are in the situation that, you were in, where they're feeling burnt out and they love the sourcing, but the listing is just not for them. And it's something, that they're interested in doing, but they just don't think it's possible. So we should definitely dive into that a little bit more, about how to make money as a wholesaler. But before we get into that, we haven't really touched on, do you have help doing this, or is it just you?
It's just me.
Yes.
Like every now and then my husband helps me take I always call them bales, because that's my packages. Like he was off, the last couple of weeks because of not off, but like he was off on a Friday. So I was literally going to walk out the door, and he came home from work early because they let him off early the Friday before Christmas. And I'm like, great, you can go to the post office with me and help me carry all this stuff in. Because I usually have to, especially on Fridays, because I have you guys, and then I have my Florida buyer, and all, like last week I had 11 of them to bring in, but there's been times when I've had like 15 if I've just had a really good haul and you guys take a lot. And it's like I go in there with an IKEA bag with like 2 or 3 in there. I lug them in, and then I go, can I borrow a cart? And they wheel one of their big carts out, and I take it out to my car and just fill it up and bring it all back in.
Isn't it great how we do that to our partners? I do that to Joe all the time. He's like such a good sport about it, though. He's like totally willing to help. But like even just Tuesday, so we had like the holiday weekend. We were all off Monday. Post office was closed, so we had extra packages going out because we had an additional weekend day. And everyone on my team called off, every single person. And I was like, how am I going to ship 150 items by myself? And I've got calls and all this stuff. And, I actually did end up packaging everything, but I texted him and I was like, if you could just come and take this stuff to the post office for me, like it would be fantastic. I feel like we just sign them up for that all the time.
Yeah. I've like been sick before, and he'll like come home from work and grab all my stuff and run to the post office before it closes. Yeah, he's very accommodating with stuff like that. I keep trying to get. I'm like, if we're both doing this, we could really make money. And he's like, honey, I don't want to go thrifting all the time. I'm fine.
Yeah, most of them don't. It's very few. Most of the time they're trying to drag you out of the thrift store. So, all right. So you're a woman show besides having your husband help every now and then. So how many clients do you have at this current moment?
So right now I have 3 online. I have a vintage store here in Vancouver, Washington.
Okay.
She currently, I just saw her at the bins today. She's not taking anything just because it's like tax season. She's at the bins looking for stuff for her store because she can get it so cheap there.
Yeah.
And she pays really good. She, I'll bring like a couple IKEA bags in, and she'll give me like $200 for the stuff that she takes, which is just awesome because it's just instant, which it's instant with you guys too. But I love vintage, and so she's not taking anything until the end of the month. So that's been kind of a little bit of damper on me financially. So I'm going to start pulling some of that stuff tomorrow and showing it to you guys because I have the 2 calls tomorrow. But so I have her, and then I have a consignment store that I just started bringing stuff into, and I actually have like $50 there. So it's not anything like I'm not consistent. It's across town. So it's like 20 minutes away. So it's just not convenient. It's completely out of my way to go there. So it's that part of it's a little frustrating, and I kind of need to just start working that into my week to bring stuff to them. But I've been there where I bring a bunch of stuff in and they're like, oh, we're not really taking much today. So I've got to figure that out. Like, do I need to call them first? Do I need to go in? Like, I don't know. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so basically four buyers for sure. And I feel like I was telling Sean, I feel tapped out as far as time thrifting and what I do thrift. And so like what he was saying, like there's people that are going to buy like stuff that other people aren't going to touch, and you got to find those people. And it's like, okay, I do, but I'm not sure how to do that right now. So
yeah. Well, it sounds like you've kind of started that process. I mean, we don't take a lot of like vintage style based stuff. We're very strict on like sell-through rate, as you know.
right.
But just the fact that, you found an in-person vintage shop, I mean, that had to have opened up like, a lot of doors to be able to sell in that category and be able to pick up a lot of more. So that's awesome that you have, I guess, different avenues, both in person and online. So you've got one vintage store, which is in person, and then you've got 3 people that you sell to and ship out to online. Right. Yep. And then consignment store every now and then. So you already kind of led into the vintage shop, but as far as the 3 clients go, us being one of them, obviously, are we all asking for the same things? Do we have different needs? Do you do things differently per client?
I do definitely do things different per client. For you guys are pretty strict on sell-through rate, but I also know that there's things that you guys will buy just based on style or,
factors.
Yeah, the factor stacking. I'm always telling Nikki, I have stacked these factors. Now you buy this. But so I know that you guys are pretty strict on that. So I try to stay in those parameters. And then like my Seattle buyer, who Nikki actually introduced me to, she actually worked for Tommy Bahama. She was pretty high up in the Tommy Bahama company. And so at first I was like picking up everything Tommy Bahama, and she's like, I'm not going to buy all this stuff from you. But she's just really into kind of like higher fashion. Mm-hmm. So I just sold her a Forever 21 sweater that just had like the whole thing was fringe, like just this really thick, like sweatery fringe. And it was just a really cool coat. So I'll pick up stuff like that regardless of brand, because I just know that she'll be like, oh yeah, I'll put that in my closet, or I'll keep it for myself or whatever. So that's her. And then my Florida buyer, she's a Swiftie, and she'll probably listen to this, but and she's really into the whole Barbiecore thing. So there's definitely things that I'll put in her pile that are more like Western, not so much like brand based, but like style based. Like she belongs to some groups on Facebook that are Taylor Swift fans. So she knows that she can like kind of reach out to them and say, hey, I've got this really cool, jacket with all this lace on it. And a lot of times it'll just get scooped up because, somebody's going to a concert and wants to wear that sort of thing. So I just kind of, you just kind of get to know your buyers and kind of cater to that. When you pick something up at the bins, you're like, oh, I think she might buy that from me,
Yeah, I think one thing we haven't talked about, I guess, in detail, at least on my channel, is how do you figure out what your buyer is looking for? I mean, obviously, when you first take them on as a client, you're asking them, but over time, like, are there certain questions that you ask or things that you ask of your clients to help you kind of narrow down what it is that we're looking for?
A lot of it is just having a good ear, like, you know, just during the calls. Like, one time they might buy something, and then, you know, like a month later you get the same thing and they're like, you know, because either the sell through right, or they still have it listed and nobody's even watching it or whatever, you know. So I just I think it's just natural for me to like tune into that kind of stuff and kind of take a mental note of it. But in the beginning it's just kind of chaotic because you're just trying, you know, you're just trying to push everything at everybody, and then you realize that, you know, what they're really into. So
a lot of trial and error.
Yeah, and I mean, I have really good communication with all of you guys, so it's not, you know, there's been times when they're like, and I'm like, don't feel obligated. Like, I don't want you to take this and buy this from me if you really don't want it. Don't do that. Like, I'll be fine. Don't worry about it, you know? And so, yeah. So there's been those times, you know, and then, you know how Nikki is. We just joke a lot.
Yeah. I love that about you, because I do have some wholesalers that, especially if they're like really new to it, if we pass on an item, you can just tell they're so bummed. And it's like, oh, that just, you know, breaks my heart. But from the get-go with you, you were always like, okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. So you've got 3 online, the 1 vintage in store, although I know you said that's kind of on pause right now. On average, and you can include the vintage store if you want to, but on average, how many items are you moving like per week, or maybe it's easier per month? Can you give us like a gist?
I was thinking about that because Sean gave me that homework to figure out what my net is, and I'm like, I still haven't sat down and done it, but I'll do it before Saturday afternoon. I think per week I'm only moving about 100.
So about 400 items a month then?
Probably.
That's still a lot of items.
I mean including because I only go see the vintage lady about once a month. So, and she usually takes 40 or 50. So, you know, like maybe close to somewhere between 450 and 500 items a month.
Yeah, that's a lot of items. I mean, if you think about in terms, because in a way, wholesaling is just a form of reselling, right? Like you get an item, you're flipping it. It's just going to a different type of buyer, I guess. But if we, you know, think of processing and shipping out 100 items a week, like that's a lot for a lot of resellers. And I'm sure that they're having trouble probably imagining, you know, what is it like to ship out that many items. So moving that many 450 to 500 items a month, and some of it you are shipping out, actually most of it you are shipping out. How are you staying like organized between all of these items from, you know, the time that you're sourcing it to having to ship it out? Like, do you have any tips on how you're staying organized as a wholesaler?
Well, I am in organized chaos most of the time.
That's a frequent thing I hear from wholesalers.
Yeah, I'm not like on top of my wholesaling, I'm also running the reselling business. Mm-hmm. So we have a 4-bedroom house. 2 of the rooms, this is my office, and then I have another room that's half storage and half photography, where I have like a drop cloth, and I have my lights, and, you know, my hangers, and I have another rack in there where I keep all my hanging clothes that I'm going to photograph. So, and then I've got like a part of the garage for storage and stuff. So it's pretty chaotic. But in my office, I have everybody's got a space. So like your guys' spots behind me. So when I come home with a haul, which is usually 2 or 3 IKEA bags worth, I just stand here with my lights on and my window open, and I just hold everything up. I'm checking it again for spots and missing buttons and stains and holes and everything else. And then I'll just kind of decide whose it's going to go into based on, sometimes it's not even based on who I bought it for, because if it's just a good brand and a good item, I just throw it in my cart, because I don't look everything up at the bins, because I've gotten to know what I can and can't resell to you guys. But so I just have different piles. So your pile, and then Florida Gal's pile, and Seattle's pile, you know. So I just like know, you know, and then when I'm going to do the buy call, whoever I'm doing the buy call, I just have everything right here in front of my camera. And then, you know, we chit chat for a minute, and then I just start, okay, this is a Ralph Lauren turtleneck. It's 100% wool. It's purple. There's no holes or stains. Do you want it? And then if they say they want it, I fold it up and roll it up, and I have my computer chair here, and I already have the bag. I have 19 by 24 inch poly mailers, and I just roll it up and stuff it in there. And when it's full, I set it to the side and put another one on there. A little trick, if you're going to do wholesale and you're doing it that way, do not close the bags. Because sometimes you come to the end and there's like 3 items left and you've already filled all your bags. And if you've closed them all, then what are you going to do with those 3 items? But if you've left them open, you can usually disperse them through the other ones. So, but yeah, that's how I do it. And then, so like every Friday, my office is empty again.
Yeah.
And I do 2 calls on Friday and 1 call on Tuesday. So.
Are you working mostly like on a weekly basis? Like, so you said like by Friday, your office is pretty much clear.
Well, yeah, because I do my buy calls on Friday, but like Friday morning, like it's full right now because I did my last bins shop today, and so
everything comes in a week, but it also typically for the most part goes out in a week as well. Okay,
right.
Week to week basis. That's a lot of items. I think one great tip that if somebody is starting wholesale is that if you are going to do these video calls, to prepare to package it as you're doing these calls, because that seems to save like so much time, and also just like organizationally, you're not throwing it in a pile somewhere and having to go back and make sure, you know, that was the item for that person. Like if they say yes and you're putting it in a shipping bag, you know that it's in there.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
So are there any common problems? Because this all sounds great so far. Are there any common problems that you have as a wholesaler that maybe people aren't thinking about?
Well, it was an adjustment, was the time that I'm putting into it. Before this, I would literally go to the bins like once every week or 2 to get my own things, to list, you know, 5 or 10 things a day, if that, and, you know, just to kind of keep my reselling business rolling. So when you're doing this, you want to give these people as much stuff as possible. And I think you or Nikki told me that Trash Panda was giving you guys like $250 a week or something, and I was just like, oh my god, like I really need to step it up. And I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that right now. There's no way. I would just run myself into the ground if I tried to do that. But
they have slowed down a little bit, just if it makes you feel better. We're at about 150 with them usually now.
Right. But so that was just intimidating, but that, you know, I just had to let that go, because like I'm not even close to being there yet. But so it's the time. Like I go to the Goodwill outlet probably 5 or 6 days a week. I go.
Yes. So your time shifted to more of the sourcing.
Yeah. So I'm like, I feel like I'm going to work every morning. I go and park my car, put on my crossbody, walk and trudge into the Goodwill bins, you know, and I spend, like, I was there for 4.5 hours today. And it was today. This is one of the downfalls. Today was one of those brutal days. They were only, usually our bins, they're just constantly rotating. And they were doing 30 to 45 minute breaks in between because they didn't have enough stuff in the back to renew on a consistent basis. Which I'm hoping will change because people got to be emptying out their closets after Christmas.
Yeah.
But so there's just days like that where it's just like I literally threw in a framed print because I was at like 22 pounds or something, and I'm just like, I'm done. I want to go home. I need to go to the grocery store. So I just threw in a print that I knew that I could get like 20 or 30 bucks for when I list it myself, or I'll just take it back or whatever. Because at my Goodwill outlet, you have to get 25 pounds or more to get the cheaper rate, which is $1.59. Otherwise, I think it's $2.39 a pound. And it doesn't sound like a huge difference, but when you're getting like 20 pounds, it's a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I wish ours had that. The one we go to, it does not have that like discounted rate, but I have been to ones that do, and I'm a little jealous. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I don't think people realize, even just like not being a wholesaler, especially being a wholesaler, because you are sourcing so much more than a reseller. But even just reselling, like thrifting is really hard on the body when you are doing it on a mass scale. And then you talk about going to a place like the bins where you're like hunched over, you're sorting, you're going through a bunch of stuff. I mean, it is like, it's exhausting, honestly. Yeah. So I'm sure as a wholesaler having to source that much more, that it does become kind of cumbersome. And I know one of the main reasons you said that you were interested in wholesaling was because you really liked the thrifting part. So is that still true? Are you still maintaining that love for the sourcing, or has it, I guess, felt more like a job?
It's definitely felt more like a job, but it's a job I'd rather do than any other job at this point in my life. Yeah. Like, I don't want to go get a 9-to-5. Not that I would be like, have to go get one, but like, I can't just sit still. I'm not good at being bored or just watching TV all day. So, I enjoy the routine of it. And I do still definitely enjoy seeing all the cool stuff. Like I'm constantly pulling out just great stuff, And I think for me, my what I'm looking for has changed, because I'm not looking for myself to resell. I have other people in mind, but I think what keeps me going too is like the obligation. Because I'm not just, like before I could just be like, well, I paid for that Disney trip, so now I can kind of pull back a little. And it's like, no, you guys still want your stuff and need your stuff. And, you guys are depending on, I mean, if I stopped doing it, you guys would be just fine. All three of you would, but you guys are depending on me for, the stuff that you're going to list. So that definitely keeps me motivated. The money keeps me motivated. So it's definitely like the love of thrifting has fallen off. Like tomorrow's Friday and I don't go thrifting on Fridays because I have buy calls in the morning. So Fridays are always kind of like, oh, good. I can just wake up and kind of chill until 9:30 when I have my first call, and I don't have to rush off to the bins. And and it is hard on the body. Like I'm 52 years old. So it's like, sometimes my feet, I have to like switch back and forth on my feet because my feet start hurting because it's concrete floor, you're on it for hours. And,
I still can't believe you're that old, Shelly. You do not look that old. You don't.
I can't believe I'm that old either. I just was playing with those AI things. Have you seen those pictures on Facebook where you can do the AI, the puzzle or whatever? And I posted a couple of those, and everybody's like, wow, you look really good. I don't think they realize it. It's like I didn't really dress up as a princess in front of a castle.
I love that.
Because they're like, wow, you look good. I'm like, it's
so yeah, I've tried a couple of those. They're it's kind of bizarre how quickly they can put some of that together.
I know.
Yeah. So you mentioned money being a big motivator. So perfect segue into everybody's question, which is how do you make money as a wholesaler? Um, just if you could give us like briefly, if someone were to ask you, I want to be a wholesaler, how does it work? How do I make money? And then if you don't mind sharing, um, maybe some examples. I know you said like you've actually been making more since, I guess, compared to reselling, you've actually been making more on the wholesaling side. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I just want to like let everybody know I could have made a lot more doing reselling. I just got lazy. Like I said, I would get motivated to like go on a trip or pay for something big, or and then I would just kind of fall off because I could. So if I put this much time and energy into reselling, number one, like what Sean and Bethany were saying, you can do that, but you're going to be working so many hours a day. It's going to get crazy and miserable, and I don't want to be miserable. I like to be happy. So how you make money doing wholesaling, you got to have somewhere like the bins to go. You got to have a place to get clothes for $1 or $2 a piece. So when I first started doing this, I would take my haul and I would count out how many things I had in that haul from the outlet. And then I would, divide it by what I spent. And I included the tax because we have sales tax here. And it was always averaging between like $1.20 and $1.50 per item. If I just went across the board, of course, you get a 4-pound coat, it's going to be more than a scarf or whatever, but just average, it was about, I always went with like $1.30, $1.35. So I feel like if I'm selling something for $3 to you guys, which that is definitely the low end. I don't sell very many things for $3, but if I do sell something to you guys for $3, I'm doubling my money. And so most of the items that I sell to you guys are $5. That's just like my go-to. Okay, $5. If it's something I know that you guys are going to get a little bit more money for, I'll ask for like 8 or 10. If it's like a scarf, I'll be like, I'm just going to throw it in there for $3. Every once in a while, I just throw something in just for the heck of it because it's
because you're nice.
Yeah, because I'm nice. But that's how you make your money. When you're like, I figured it out. My last sales call or my last buy call, I kind of figure out the pounds, because I pack all this stuff and I know about how many pounds it is. So I figured it out, and it was like 36 pounds worth. And I calculated it all up, and it was like right around $60, I think, is what I spent on it, because I can do pounds because that's how I buy it, by the pound. And I sold it to her for, I think it was $195. So
in one go.
In one go. I didn't have to list anything. I have to ship it, but it's all getting shipped together. I'm not shipping it individually. That whole lot was sent out in 4 packages, and taken to the post office, and they're on their way to her. And so that's how you make money. When you buy something for $1.30 and you're selling it for $5, that's a huge markup,
Yes. A lot of people, I think, when they hear, these are not small margins, I know, for wholesale, but when someone hears, let's just for easy math say $1 into 5 and you're making $4. I guess when people hear that, they think, well, $4 profit, isn't a lot, because they're thinking of like reselling where you've got the platform fees and you've got, all this other stuff, offers and things going on. And I don't think that they realize that can be, that small amount gets multiplied quickly because you're moving so many items so quickly. So, I mean, in terms of like, let's just say a bins trip, how many items on average? I know some days are better or worse, but like how many items are you picking up in a bin strip? I mean, like per hour, even if you're getting 10 items per hour at the bins, that's $40 an hour. That's a lot more than most people make at, their day jobs. So for sure.
Yeah, and that's probably about average. When I haven't done it for a while where I've counted my haul, and because I realized that I could do it by weight like that, and it's a little bit easier.
That's smart. Yeah.
But it was usually between like 40 and 50 items for a haul. Awesome. And then, and then I would average it out to what I paid for it. And it was, like I said, like the high end was like $1.50, but that hardly ever showed up. It was usually like around $1.20, $1.30. And so it was like, okay, and then sometimes I'm like, oh, I showed her all that stuff and it was only $195. And then I will sit there and do the math and I'm like, oh, okay, it's fine. I just spent like $95 or whatever on that, or whatever it was, 190 or 150 or whatever. So it's like, to me, that's worth it. And, and then of course there's going to be like vehicle costs and and all of that stuff. I factor all that in with my miles and all, and like that goes into talking to your CPA and everything. Like I'm not giving any tax advice or anything, but all of that stuff does add up, but I don't really think about it because I know it's just going to be taken care of at the end of the year when I do my taxes. I'm not really worried about that. And
yeah. And I know for us, we pay shipping like separately. So shipping is a wash for like almost all of our wholesalers. So like we pay for the items plus shipping is covered.
Yes.
So unless you are a wholesaler who is including the shipping cost per item cost, like there's really not a whole lot of math other than your cost of goods and how much you're selling it for, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's a little bit of supplies, but because I'm already a reseller, I already have the tape and I already have the scale and, like I already had all of that stuff. So that I just, and what's so funny is everybody has digital scales. I still have an old American kitchen scale that I've been using since I very first started. And that thing has never done me wrong.
Is that one of the ones that like pushes and then the scale moves? Yeah. That's awesome. That thing will probably never fail you either.
I mean, I always add like an ounce or something, when I'm weighing stuff, like my own reselling just to be safe. But it has like, I've never had anything come back because I didn't weigh it right. So that's kind of cool.
I think the simplicity of a wholesale model is what is starting to draw a lot of people in because you are able to cut out so many processes that you have in reselling, and the math is just so much simpler, and it seems much easier to make goals too because you have so little numbers to work with. I mean, there's only so many things that can be affected.
When I was just doing resale on my little part-time basis, I mean, I don't even remember what I was making. My car payment's $400, and that was always my goal. And I always made that goal, and I always had like a little bit left over. But there was a couple of times it'd be like, that my car payment's due on the 29th, and it's like the 20th, and I'm like, ooh, I still need like $50 to make my car payment, and so it was just kind of like this little kind of hobby thing. And like I said, in the past, there's been times when I've ramped it up where I was making $2,000 a month, 10 years ago or something. Just to give you an example, because my kids knew what my reselling was. My son needed to go get his driver's test. He's a little bit of a late bloomer. He went and got his driver's test and he had an appointment for it. And he's like, Mom, can you take me? It's like Thursday or Friday or something. Or I think it was on a Friday. And I said, no, I can't take you. You're going to see if your sister can. Because it was during the summer and she's a teacher, so she was off. And I guess they told their dad, oh, apparently Mom's too busy to take Marley to get his driving test. And he's like, your mom made $1,600 this week. And they were like, oh, it's not like life-changing, but it really was life-changing for me after just like, squeaking by making my car payment every month, maybe a couple extra $100 or whatever. And this has been like, you know, I'm making extra car payments, and I'm, you know, paying for groceries, and I'm, you know, contributing every couple weeks to the household income. You know, it's just, for me, it's just been like, I don't even know what the numbers are. And if you were on the video, or on the call on Saturday, I'll have those numbers available.
I'll watch the replay.
Oh, you're not going to be on Saturday?
No, Saturdays are usually going to be Bethany and Sean running those.
Okay.
I'll be mostly, Nikki and I'll be mostly running the Monday calls, which, by the way, if anybody's watching and they're like, why does she keep talking about calls with Sean? We're talking about the Resellers Edge group that just launched. And we're talking about the live calls during that and giving people one-on-one help and things like that. And Shelly and Sean and Bethany were talking about wholesale. So that's where these are coming from. Yes.
So, you know, it's just helped a lot. Like if I'm doing, you know, 400 items a month and I'm averaging $4 profit on those, I mean, that's like $1,600.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like those $1,600 weeks were when I had really good calls with all of you, you know, several $100s, and then I would go to my vintage gal and she'd do like $300, you know, and it'd just be like, this is so awesome. You know, and then a couple weeks later it's like, oh, I made $600 this week, you know. So it definitely fluctuates just depending on what your people are buying and how much you can get. I mean, there's the last month has been really kind of flip-floppy with Christmas and the holidays and stuff. And then I don't know what's been happening at the outlet, but like today was one of those days where it's just brutal. It really is, because it's like, I've been there for 4 hours. I only have 22 pounds. The new bins that came out, there's literally 50 people around them. I'm not going to go fight that. I'm not leaving my cart by itself. I'm not one of those people, because I don't appreciate when other people do that. And I don't want to leave my cart because people will steal out of them. And it doesn't happen often, but there's definitely been times when it just happened the other day. I put a pair of jeans in my cart, and then when I got home, I'm like, those weren't in there. And I was like, one of those little, you know what? Because there's a bunch of high school kids because school was out, you know?
Yeah, we have the same issue at our bins, and it didn't used to be that way, but I noticed like people are starting to put like the sheets over the carts and stuff, and there's been a lot of, I haven't been going very regularly, but every time I go, like I hear a story, and that is why we bring a Hulken, because it can go down the aisle without hitting everybody, or you can have it like right behind you and it's small enough to like keep with you. But yeah, I don't trust anybody at the bins either. But that would be detrimental to your business if, you know, something happened to your cart.
Yeah, that's like literally the first time that's ever happened. And then I was also questioning myself, like, did I find a flaw on those and put them back? Because I remember looking at them and going, these are really cool, and putting them in my cart, and then they weren't there when I got home, and I was like, and I had my cart with me the whole time, but you're not looking at your cart. You got your cart over here, and you're, you know, in the bin.
Cleared up misconceptions about making money as a wholesaler. I feel like definitely after this call, especially as a solopreneur, you can attest that it is definitely possible to make good money through wholesaling. Are there any other misconceptions that you can think of that you want to share with anyone about wholesaling that you've heard kind of like in the reseller community?
For me, like I said, it's just time consuming. And I think that you become obligated to other people, which can be a good thing because it keeps you motivated. But it definitely is a lot of work, and you're not necessarily buying stuff that you would buy for yourself. You're buying stuff that you would buy, that you're buying for other people. You're like a personal shopper. So you get to know what they want. And I mean, I think the biggest misconception is, how do you make money? I mean, honestly, people just don't get it, because, you know, if I sell, and I have sold you guys like Johnny Was shirts for $10, I could went and made $75 on that Johnny Was shirt, but I'd have to list it, which, you know, something like that might be worth doing it on your own. But most of the stuff is like bread and butter, you know, anywhere from like $25 to $45. And it's out the door and you've made your profit. You know, you can't get, if you're one of these people that gets all upset about, you know, every time somebody returns something or whatever, if you get attached to the things that you buy, which I think we all do in some form or another, you have to let go of that. Yeah. It's the turn and burn, like literally. You are bringing it home, storing it for a week or less, and then sending it on its way and making usually 3 to maybe 7 or 8 times what you paid for it, depending on how much you sold it. And to me, that's awesome for not having to do all that work for it.
Yeah. If somebody were to come to you today, which we can talk about this here in a second because I know that people do. If someone were to come to you and say, hey, Shelly, I see what you're doing. Like, I want to do that. What advice would you give to somebody that says, I want to be a wholesaler?
I would advise them to learn how to look at sell-through rate, because that's a huge deal. In my opinion, finding people to wholesale to is the easiest part. Like, I could literally have 100 people that I buy for right now. Like, every time I do anything, you know, just like being a moderator on your guys' YouTube calls, and people find out I'm a wholesaler, they'll find me on Facebook, or they'll find my Facebook group, and then they immediately message me and say, hey, I'm looking for a sourcer. Are you going to be able to buy, you know? And then they're like, put me on your waiting list. I'm like, I don't have a waiting list.
Yep.
There's no waiting list. And so I'm hoping that this whole interaction with Sean and Bethany will help me find different avenues for different stuff. Because like I said, I feel tapped out with you guys because I'm buying specific things for you. And it's not like I'm putting back a bunch of stuff and only bringing home a fraction. I'm bringing home everything I can find for you guys. And and I know that, like, if that amped up and I was finding like 500 items a week for you guys, that you would buy it all, because you guys,
absolutely,
because you guys are, you know, moving and grooving in your own business. So sell-through rates is a big thing. Just getting to know your buyers, not only getting to know your buyers, like what they'll buy, but getting to trust each other, because there's a lot of trust that goes on with this. Like, I will do your guys' call tomorrow with you or Nikki, and I'll pack it all up, and I will print out all the labels, and by 3:00 tomorrow afternoon, everything will be at the post office. And you guys might not send me my money until Saturday, just because you guys are busy. And I don't worry about that, because I trust you guys. I know that you're going to send me my money. But in the beginning, there is a fine line there with people that, you know, I felt like the whole time I could trust you. if you guys didn't pay me, I could call you out on YouTube.
I was going to say, I always tell them, I'm like, listen, when we have new wholesalers, I'm like, you could burn my house down. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're public on YouTube, like, but I don't have the same protections from you. So I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, I felt pretty good with my Seattle gal, but that very first gal, like I said before, you know, I was just sending her boxes of stuff, and she was looking at it and then sending me the money after she got it. And it was just a trust thing. But you just have to build that trust. So if you don't know the person and you want your money up front, I would ask for it. Like, you just got to kind of feel those things out for yourself and trust your gut on that. And, you know, obviously if someone takes all your stuff and never pays you for it and disappears, then, you know, you never ever, you know, I mean, the worst thing for me is I'm out like $50 or $60 if I, you know, sent you guys a bunch of stuff and I didn't get paid or whatever. But there just becomes a lot of trust and there's a lot of friendship. I mean, I know that like I sent you guys Christmas little Christmas goodies, and Nikki sent me some stuff, and and so it that part of it becomes fun. You become friends with these people. I mean, we're talking about visiting each other in person and stuff. So that's really cool. So, but yeah, I would just advise to get to know, if you have vintage people, you're not going to need to know sell-through rate. You're going to need to know vintage stuff. If you have, t-shirt people, because there's tons of t-shirt people out there, then you need to know, what to look for in t-shirts. You got to, if you don't already know, you need to learn that, and you might have all of those people and be looking for all of that stuff. So
yeah, I definitely know that even though you've already said that you're not taking on new clients, I know that we're gonna get a lot of people trying to reach out, and like you said, like you said it yourself, like that at any moment you could have 100 clients if you were open to it. Like there's just that much of a need for it. So just to confirm, you are currently not taking on new clients, but do you plan on taking any more in the future? If so, do you have a wait list? You kind of already said no, but I just want to confirm.
Yeah, currently I'm not taking on anybody. I do not have a wait list. I am looking at switching gears pretty hardcore in the next month or two and going from reselling individual stuff on my own to going more into just doing all wholesale. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to go, because I definitely need more buyers to do that, but I'm not sure how to manage my time to get more stuff. But I also have around 1,000 things in my own inventory that I need to start letting go of. And, some of it's Shein and Forever 21, and some of it's, Sundance, and I don't think I have any Johnny Was right now because it sells super fast. But, I definitely have some higher end brands that I'm going to be letting go of. And the majority of that stuff I'm going to offer to my 3 buyers to begin with, just because that's who I'm faithful to, that's I'm loyal to you guys, and I want to give you guys whatever I can. But I really would like to find some American Eagle, Old Navy, Forever 21 buyers that are more into style and maybe like the whole Depop scene, kind of that kind of aesthetic, and maybe find some people like that, and vintage, because right now I literally have 3 totes or 3 IKEA bags full of vintage in the other room, and she's not taking anything for another 2 or 3 weeks. And so I've kind of pulled back doing vintage. In fact, I found a couple of things today and I just went and gave them to her to put in her cart, and she's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, don't worry about it. I found some cool stuff, and you've treated me very well. Here's some more cool stuff, but, and that's another thing, is you just you have to be open to just giving them deals every once in a while, I know there's things that I've sold to you guys that I probably could have got 10 or 15 bucks for, but I just feel like I really appreciate you guys, and it's not a big deal. I'm still making money if I give it to you for 5. So I just, throw it in there or whatever. So,
well, we really appreciate you. And I think a big theme I hear with wholesaling is that it's worth it to make sure that you have that long-term relationship, because, if you might miss out on $5 extra per piece, but you're hooking them for the long-term partnership of selling to somebody for years or decades, or however long you end up doing this. But definitely good to keep both the client and the wholesaler happy. I feel like it's definitely like a give and take for sure. So you're not currently taking on new clients, but you are potentially and probably moving into wholesaling full-time, which I think would be fantastic for you. And I think, as you work with everybody in the group, like I just think it's going to flourish and grow, and you're going to really love it. By the way, if you didn't know, Bethany and Sean were like top sellers on Depop for a really long time. So if you're looking for that kind of buyer, I feel like they would really help you with that.
They kind of alluded to that a little bit. And I've been like thinking I should just get a hold of them. And I'm like, no, just wait until Saturday. We don't need to rush this. But the other thing that I want to say to everybody, and I've said it, in comments or whatever on your videos, I do have a Facebook group.
Yes.
And so I'm going to click over to it really quick so I can remember what it's called, because I'm so bad. I don't know why I made a face. It's called Resellers Connection with Wholesalers / Sourcers / Pickers.
I will put a link to it in the description box too, if anybody wants to click on to it. So what is this group, Shelly, and how long have you been running this group? How many people are in it?
Give us a scoop. 230 people in there right now. Most, I would say probably at least 200 of them or more, are resellers. There are a few wholesalers in there. It's been going for a couple months thanks to Kaylee's channel. A lot of people have joined. And so it's just a place to connect with wholesalers or resellers. If you're a wholesaler, you can go on there and say, hey, I have 50% or better sell-through rate items. Who's interested? The only thing I'm asking people not to do there is to directly put an ad on. It's okay to put pictures of what you want there, but do everything privately. Go to direct messages, exchange whatever information you need to exchange, because I don't want to become like a babysitter if somebody is dishonest or something. Obviously, if somebody's dishonest, let me know and I'll do a little investigating and maybe get them off of the group. But I just don't want to become a referee on there if people aren't getting what they want or, whatever. That's all up to you guys. And that's I just don't know what the formula is for finding good partnerships with this. It just sort of happens. And I've just been really lucky that the first 3 people that I dealt with have all just been amazing. I mean, like I said, if you guys don't pay me until Saturday or Sunday and I've already shipped out your stuff, I'm not fretting at all. I might send you guys,
sorry about that. I'm forgetful. It's me.
I text and be like, I don't come out and say, hey, are you going to pay? I always be like, well, yesterday I sent out your stuff. Yeah. And then yesterday, it's just like a little push or whatever. But at no time am I panicking or oh, I hope they pay me. I know that you guys are busy. It's not a matter of that, but I just wish that there was some sort of formula. I think Trash Panda has an actual contract. Do they? I guess that would be the way to the formula to not get.
Yeah, they have a contract, but it's more like an accounting kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, Nikki and I are the ones that usually get a contract ready for our wholesalers and have them sign it. But I think that's a great idea for wholesalers. But I also think it's a great idea that you are kind of hands off on your face, not hands off, but that you are saying these transactions need to happen outside. I think that's a smart move, because you don't want to, get in the middle of all that. Plus, you don't want to see everybody's personal information, where they live, posting addresses, how much, the deals happening on your Facebook group as well. But I think a lot of wholesalers do just contracts and then DocuSign.
I see. Yeah. I'm too new to all of that, I guess. Yeah. And like I said, I've just been so lucky that I got these great people to sell to, because there's just I just send them their invoice and they send me the money and I send their stuff. And the other thing that I want to talk about really quick is the fact that I send you guys stuff that ends up having spots or holes or missing buttons or rips or whatever. And I don't know how other wholesalers deal with it, but I give you guys credit. And so like if it's like a spot and it's there, you guys are still going to try to sell it because it's a really good brand or whatever, and the spot's in an inconspicuous place, you'll still note it and list it, but then I give you half of your money back, or if you've had to wash it, if you had to put it through the laundry. But if it's just like, there's been times when I've sent you like a pair of pants with like the crotch ripped out of it.
It happens.
Like, and it's so funny because you guys are always like, I'm sorry. I'm like, why are you sorry? I'm the one that sent you this stuff. But I just think it's important. I don't know how all of the other wholesalers deal with it, but I just, so like the one that I just did on Tuesday, I owed her from the last 3 batches because we had skipped a week because of Christmas and everything. I'd owed her $40, but I think that was like 2 or 3 batches because she hadn't caught up with
right.
going through her stuff yet. So I owed her $40. So she only ended up paying me $155, but I got that $40, a couple weeks ago,
Right.
So
definitely some customer service involved.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Because if you shop at the bins,
it's going to happen.
I mean, this stuff, I check it when I buy it at the bins. I check it when I come home. I check it again when I sell it to you guys. So it's had 3 or 4 checks before it even hits the mail bag. And then you guys get it and you're like, oh, the whole crotch was ripped out, or this whole seam was undone, or the zipper was broken. It's like, oh, dang it.
Yeah, I definitely think that if somebody is going to wholesale, they need to have some level of customer service, like rules, I guess, going into it, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, and also talk with your client about that and make sure they're comfortable and that you guys are meeting in the middle. All of our wholesalers are really great. I don't have a single wholesaler right now that doesn't give us some form of credit if we need to wash or trash or decrease value or whatever. But we also say up front, like, we're asking for that because we know it can be a problem. But I really appreciate you doing that for us. It really helps a lot. So if you guys, is there anything else you wanted to add, Shelly, that maybe we haven't discussed today?
I don't think so. We've covered everything. You said that you're going to put the link to my Facebook group, so maybe we'll get some more people. We need more wholesalers, so if you're interested, and if you have any questions about wholesaling, you can ask on that group, and I will definitely see it and answer.
If you guys are interested in, you're thinking about like, okay, this sounds really great, I want to start trying to become a wholesaler. Shelly made that group originally to I believe to just teach about wholesaling, right? And then it kind of morphed into, well, let's connect people because there's a huge need for it. So you're over there helping with how to wholesale too, correct?
Right. Yeah. If people are asking questions, I've done like a couple of things on like how I ship and, just the process. And I have done a couple videos on YouTube that I've linked over there. So,
yeah. So go join that group. We definitely need more wholesalers over there. So if you are a wholesaler and you're not in that group, there are a lot of buyers over there. If you're looking,
there are a ton of buyers.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because I tell everybody to go private to meet up privately, I don't really see the interactions. Like I'll see a couple saying, "Oh, I direct messaged you," or I'm trying to get a hold of you or something like that. But I don't honestly know all the dealings that are happening there because I've asked people not to do it there. So
There's definitely stuff going on because I participated in one person that literally just started wholesaling, and I don't even remember what she posted, but like a bunch of us contacted her, and she was having like live Facebook videos. And so I could see who all went over to her page and like contacted her and stuff. And she messaged me and she's like, I'm sorry, I'm a little overwhelmed. And I was like, yeah, I can tell, like, you got a lot
Yeah.
of buyers. So there's definitely deals being done behind the scenes. And I think they're happening fast because there's definitely more buyers than there are wholesalers. But if you are, like I said, a wholesaler and you're not in that group and you're looking for clients, I mean, I can't guarantee it, but I like 99% could say you'd probably find a buyer over there for sure.
Yeah, I think you would. There's like I said, there's 230 people in the group right now, and I would bet that at least 200 of them are resellers that are ready to buy from wholesalers.
Yeah. And if you're interested, if this all sounds good to you and you're like, you know what, I want to be one of those wholesalers and you want to learn a little bit from Shelly going over there. Shelly, where else can they find you if you want to share?
I mean, Facebook is, I do have a YouTube channel.
I will link that down below as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I could go get the link.
All the links will be down below in the description.
Yeah, my YouTube channel, it's mostly reselling content, some hauls, and then there's a couple of videos that I made about wholesaling and how to do it. And
awesome. Well, I'll put both of those links down below for the Facebook group and your YouTube channel.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, everybody show Shelly some love down in the comments because she spent the better part of, let's see, it's been almost an hour and a half now doing this interview with me and sitting through a lot of freeze screens on my end.
Too bad.
So thank you so much for coming on. And if you guys have any questions for Shelly, drop them in the comments down below. I'm sure I could convince her to come back on again. And maybe we can cover some of those questions too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks you everybody for watching. And thank you, Shelly, for being on.
Yep. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yep. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.